All right, welcome back to the compound. And this is it's a couple times you've been here now.
Yeah.
So I want a two-part question. How important is the space to work when you're creative? And then what do you think about the compound?
I'll start with the second question.
Okay.
I love this space. I mean, from the day I walked in here, like you can just tell, like good things happen here. I
Thank
think
you.
spaces have energy, and I think creative people are very attuned to energy, and when you walk into a space with good energy, good things happen.
I'm trying, man. I'm trying to make the Pee Wee's Playhouse of advertising.
Yeah.
Right.
And then as far as space for creatives and kind of thinking, I think my opinions have changed on that.
Wow.
Pretty significantly over the last few years, and I think obviously like COVID had a lot to do with that. But I think, in my prior role running, a big global network, what I found was, especially when people were kind of trapped, in their homes, there was such a desire, I think, to let their minds go other places, that some incredible creativity came out of kind of these unexpected consequence of being kind of so restricted.
Yeah, that's true.
And so, what I found for me personally was like a lot of my best creativity came from like just walking.
Not being confined.
And I would go on these long walks and just like be on the phone for like hours, and like people around my town thought I was crazy because I'd just be like, who's this guy like walking
wandering.
and talking to himself?
Nah, I never looked at it like that. It's like the world is your office almost.
Yeah, I think like again, like it, and it's so deeply personal. I think some people need a lot of structure.
Yep.
I think some people, are self-destructive when they have too much structure. I think, some people need to move through their thoughts. I think some people need to sit with them. Like, I don't think there's a specific way, but I'm a lot, I guess, more open-minded to, how you channel great creative thinking, now than I was, just a few years ago.
No, I might open compound playgrounds where like they're outside workspaces.
Yeah.
Where, like, imagine like the playground instead of sliding boards, it's like a desk, and then it's like, cause you're right. I drive, I love driving. So driving is
Totally.
my piece. And it's like, I can probably get 15 calls done. Sometimes I took Zoom calls while I'm driving, but it is something about being outside and that worldly input, like connected with creative. All right, I got it. I'm straight. So now we're gonna start compound conversations. Basically, what it is for me is like, it's not interviews. It's not like a podcast or a talk show. It's just me having conversations with my friends and people I think are incredible. And you of course you get the C-suite level, but I think you're a creative just across the board from the start. And I want to know how, I would like media to me and shows and television always talks about the current thing, like what you're doing right now and like the hot topic. With me, a lot of people don't get to know Ari Weiss. Like, so even me, I don't know before DDP. Couple things, but I like having a conversation of your journey. So
Yeah.
for me, let's start from the top. Where were you born, and who was the family? Like,
Yeah. Well, I grew up in Berkeley, California.
Okay.
Born in 1978. So Berkeley definitely had a vibe around then.
Totally.
And I was the oldest of four siblings. I have two other brothers and a sister. And yeah, Berkeley was like a trip to grow up. And, I for 18 years thought that was like how the rest of the world was.
Wow.
And, then I went off to college in Boston, and,
Wait, back up. Warriors fan, though, right?
yep, Warriors, Sharunas Marshallonis and Tim Hardaway and Mullen. Actually, just for my birthday, my good friend sent me a cameo from Chris Mullen.
Wow.
And best gift I got this year, hands down.
What about Baron Davis, though?
I love Baron Davis.
Okay,
I've done a couple of things with him, actually. A couple of projects. We'll get to it, I guess, at some point. But I ran the NBA
Yep.
for a few years, and Barron was all over it then.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's why the ball is near you.
Yeah,
We get
yeah.
to go through your whole journey.
Yeah.
So, all right, sorry to disconnect the story, but you had to shout the Warriors out.
Yeah, shot have for sure. So yeah, Berkeley, 1970s, 80s. Went to Berkeley High. Big, crazy high school, super diverse. They did they did a documentary on the school at the time I was there, basically based on like how dysfunctional it was, because they just didn't know how to get it right. Like they didn't know how to get like this crazy homogenized, like a melting pot, right. And so they were trying to do, many different systems, and none of them were working. But it was such an interesting experience, to go through as, a teenager, because you just, again, I saw a world that I thought was very, very normal, that, you go out, especially you go out to a place like Boston, and you kind of realize
Totally two different worlds.
Yeah.
So let's stay in Berkeley, in that world, right? For me, growing up, because a lot of people were like, was you always like this? Was you always creative? And for me, I grew up only boy, 2 older sisters in the house, not like a loner. My toys were my creativeness of like building sets and building, literally introducing my toys to each other. Like, I always credit me growing up, like toys was where my creativity came. For you at a young age, where did creativity come from for you, or did you even know when you like, okay, I'm different, or I think different?
Yeah, I think, God, that's a great question. I mean, I don't think I was like particularly creative or like exhibited a ton of those skills early on. I think, I was very curious about the things I was curious about, but I wasn't very studious,
Gotcha.
like on the things that didn't have my attention. So
Gotcha.
for me, school was tricky for me until around high school, when it kind of started to click that I could like get into things that like I was into. And that's when probably kind of the first, I guess, sign of creativity probably showed up, when I was super into photography. I just got super into photography, and I loved how like a single frame could just tell like an incredible story, So I did like yearbook stuff, and I took every photography class I could. And, I thought coming out of high school that I was going to kind of go down the path of being a photojournalist. And then I kind of realized you'd spend most of your time in kind of war-torn countries and that kind of stuff. And I was like, maybe there's a better path for me.
Yeah.
But I think I also kind of early on, I always had a bit of an entrepreneurial mind. I always liked solving problems, puzzles,
Gotcha.
And I liked that kind of logic too. Like I was a huge Gary Larson fan as a kid. Like I loved The Far Side. I loved just like, again, like stories being told kind of in a single frame. And I think that kind of thinking, that kind of like enjoyment of storytelling, I guess.
Yep. Okay, so now we can get out of high school. Now we're in Boston.
Yeah.
It's starting to click. Photography.
Yeah.
Blends also into storytelling.
Yeah.
So what was college like now, coming from Berkeley? Both sides of just moving away from home.
Yeah.
Coming into yourself as a man, and then at the same time finding your creative, learning all these new, different ways of life and career path. And what was that experience for you like?
So it was great. I mean, I think college for me was a moment where, like, again, like it was kind of like high school, but, even crazier, right?
Yeah,
because like you get to really focus on what you want. And I went to school in the College of Communication at Boston University. Yep. And, I was into it. Like I was like finally, like I get to like really think on the stuff that I want to think on. Yeah. And, I had this one kind of basic communications class where they walked you through like all the kind of different, areas of communication, from film to television to advertising to PR to, that kind of stuff. And when we got on the advertising section of it, I was like, like this has the like puzzle part that I really like. This has like the logic and the game and like finding an interesting way to get people curious about whatever you're talking about. But it also has the artistic side. It has the side of like bringing something to life and going on a production and making films or whatever. Exactly. So I was like, that's something I want to check out, quite a bit more. And I left that summer to go back to Berkeley. And, I'd shared with my parents that I'd been, really curious about kind of this advertising idea. And they were like, there's a kid who your brother went to school with. His dad has an agency in San Francisco. Like, maybe he'd take you on as an intern or something for the summer. So I reached out to him, and his name was Jeff Goodby.
Okay.
And I got an internship at Goodby Silverstein and Partners. And
wow.
I walked in there, my first day, and I was like, this is something special.
That was the aha moment for you.
Yeah, and there really was no looking back from that point on. Like that was like, I was like getting blueberry muffins and coffees, and I remember one day I had to pick up the president's daughter and like his Mercedes, and like I'd never driven a Mercedes before.
It's not a bad car to drive.
No, it wasn't bad, but I was like, I don't want to like.
I want to crash.
Yeah, I want to mess this up.
Nah, so me, I went to a college, but I didn't go to school.
Yeah.
I stayed at Penn State University for 3 years up in Happy Valley.
Yeah.
And my mother used to call and be like, why don't you go to school? I was like, Mom, it's okay. We're going to figure this out. Do you feel you feel like college really like contributed to the process of where you're at now, or it was just a time in life that you learned things, but you really, where you're at now, do you think college really helped? Because for some people say like, I know people have degrees and they're like, you know what? I loved my experiences at college, but everything I went to school for, I'm not doing nothing with that now. But for your world, how does that sit for you?
I think I got really lucky in that I think Boston University had a program that ended up really just scratching a lot of those itches for me.
Got you.
And
it was like a trigger point for you.
Yeah, and they also believed they were super supportive and like was part of their curriculum, these kind of internships. So after I did Goodby, I was like hooked, and I was like, I got to get back in. And so when I went back to Boston, I got an internship at Arnold. And this was the time they were doing all the like killer like Volkswagen stuff.
Yeah. Didn't Arnold do the wedding spot? I think.
Probably, yeah.
That's one of my favorite commercials.
Yeah, no, and like I was again like these guys were like rock stars in my eyes, and I would go in there every day, and they may or may not have been smoking illicit substances and playing a ton of GoldenEye, and I was just like, this is crazy.
This is cool,
like,
right?
This is a job. They like it was the stuff they were making was like
incredible.
Magical. It was culture. It was like it wasn't just selling cars. Like it was the whole vibe.
It was fun. It happened the same way for me. It was like 1997. I went to Miami, Florida, and I got a chance to go into Crispin Porter Bogusky.
Yeah.
And I was just a DJ, and I was working at AND1 at the time, and I was like, it was like walking into a factory of people making ideas. And there was all these rooms, and I remember their office had these auditorium steps, and I was like, wait, all of y'all just get paid to sit around and think?
It's crazy.
And work on the coolest companies in the world? And it was like, yeah. And I was like, okay. Like you said, the itch got scratched, and I was, they was doing like, they had the Truth campaign. Yeah. Like, that's when I met Alex Bogusky, and blessed he took me under his wing and just showed me a lot of things. But it was that aha moment of like looking at ideas like, oh, this is what advertising is, this is what marketing is, and these are the people that are like connected to it.
Well, they were having so much fun doing it.
Totally.
And what they were making like was having such an impact and effect, like that you're just kind of like how can a job
be like
be
this,
like this, you know,
and I get paid.
yeah, and you know, fast forward a few more internships, and you know, a few years into having like my real first job at Cliff Freeman and Partners, and you know, we went out to LA for our first shoot, and I'll never forget, like the DP was a guy called Bill Pope who had just shot The Matrix, and they had shut down this, you know, 3-block area in LA, and they had the cranes and the lights and the this and that. And I was like, this is all to do this Fox Sports campaign that we just like had this crazy idea that they said yes to, like, and like you couldn't believe it was real. You were like I remember saying to my partner at the time, like, I would have paid to go do this,
Yeah,
you know, and
to learn
and,
this too.
Yeah, totally, and yeah, and I do. I still, you know, 27 years ish later, feel pretty much the same way. I mean, we did a project just a couple years, a year or two ago.
Now.
And same exact feeling.
Nah,
you know, it doesn't change, or not for me.
Not for me either. So one thing, sports. I know you're a huge basketball fan.
Yeah.
You got a chance to hang out with Floor Seat Free.
Yep.
That guy's a cool guy.
Cool guy.
But the reason I asked you about sports and tying this into it is teams. Like, you know, you come from some of the biggest companies in the world. You was one of the key figures at DDB and worldwide. And how important is team in your journey, you putting a team together, and how it's like you're like a coach of advertising, you know, even when we met, large team that we worked on the spots together. But how important is team, and like how do you go about understanding like what I had to build through your journey through all these years?
Yeah, I mean, team is everything, and you know, there's no great project that I've been a part of that hasn't been, you know, due to many people's contributions. Like I can tell you endless stories where like a project should have gone one way,
Yep.
and it was saved and went another. You know, even our project, the thing we did for Coors Light, chill boards, you know, there was a moment where if we hadn't found the community that was up for having us paint the roofs, it was over. Like the idea was contingent, and like an idea like that had never been done before. So like, how the hell are you gonna go find these roofs? And like, you know, we found the roofs. That was like this moment where it's gonna live or die, like based on it. And I think what happens, you know, I use that project as proxy for this topic of teamwork, is when you have a shared vision, and when that shared vision is exciting to everybody who's being brought in to participate, like you find a way. You know, and I think that's been my biggest kind of epiphany. But like, the idea has to be exciting enough to everybody.
So to everybody.
You know, and that's what creates a team. You know, what creates a team is an excitement over the shared ambition.
Wow.
And so I feel like ultimately that's my job, and you know, as a creative leader, my job is to build excitement for the idea, and be able to identify the ideas that ultimately, you know, are worth getting excited over. Because, you know, there's a lot of bad ideas out there, and you know, one of the things I always say to my teams and I always say to my clients is like, nobody cares. You know, nobody cares. I don't care what you're selling. Nobody cares.
I'm sorry.
There's one or two things maybe people care about, but like, our job's to make them care, and we make them care by finding a way that connects like deeply with them, and by creating stories, and by creating narratives or providing value that, you know, wouldn't otherwise be provided. And like, I don't know, I think that's the good that brands can bring to this world, is like, you know, if we make people care, and we bring true value to our audiences, however that is, then, you know, then this is like a noble cause, you know.
Yeah.
If we're just, you know, trying to like smash our message in front of as many eyeballs as possible, and like think we're gonna, you know, blunt people into buying things, like, I don't know. That's not really what I want to do.
Well, I'm glad you said it in like the PG-13 way. I tell my team, nobody gives a fuck.
Yep.
And
Yep.
it's true, like, a lot of times you get in this world, like a lot of businesses, it's about that ROI, like, but if you can find a way to hit your marks and make the money need to make, but make people care about things, it is a way better feeling and experience.
Yeah, that's a big reason why I went to go do my own thing now.
Wait,
Too far? Too quick?
you jumped
All right, let's back it up.
10 years.
Rewind. Yep.
So, all right, we go from team, because you explained how team is,
Yeah.
and let's jump to like the next chapter of yours, which when you went to work with the NBA.
All right, so this is probably around 10 years in now.
Okay.
I go back to Goody Silverstein and Partners, where I was an intern.
Yep.
This time I get hired, as a creative director. And I'm running the National Basketball Association account, which is a dream job.
Dream job.
And this was a time their ratings were down a bunch. It was a contract year with TNT and ABC.
Big year.
And so they needed to get those ratings up big time. And so, they put a big push together, and the marketing team at the NBA at the time was fantastic. This was still, David Stern era.
Yep.
Adam was around.
Adam was doing.
Yeah, he was around.
He was doing
Yeah.
entertainment, right?
But we got in there, and this was before I had kids, luckily. Because we would travel with the teams
Wow.
for like 3-4 months, and you have no idea. I mean, you can intellectualize it, but you don't really get it until you start traveling with
With
them.
them, yeah.
How much these guys are moving around
Every night.
I mean, and cross country, and like the schedules don't make any sense. It's not like
Yeah, like you go-
it's like, okay, we'll do an East Coast tour.
LA.
No, they're going like bop 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 bop.
Yeah, every night.
And it's cool. We got in with them, and we did a couple really great campaigns. We shot one with Davey Ferris, who is one of my kind of all-time favorite directing teams, and it was just so great to like get in that world and see them as like human beings
Yeah.
versus superstars.
Yeah.
And really kind of getting under the hood of like that kind of level of performance, but the humanity that exists, with it. Yeah. And I think that forever changed my view of like probably all celebrities and,
Wow.
and all kind of superstars, of like the level of humanity that exists that we tend to strip out of
Yeah.
them because
They're
they're
these big
held on
icons.
such pedestals. Yeah, and I think that humanity is fascinating because they live in a very complicated world because of the pedestals they're put on.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of the things we did this campaign called "There Can Only Be One," where we did like a split screen of the athletes.
That was the playoff campaign.
Yeah.
I remember. I was like, it's funny because I ripped you off. Our partner in a clothing company called Underground at the same time.
Yeah.
And we did the split faces because of
That kid, yeah. And we wrote these scripts, and I remember Kevin Garnett actually, who was like had worked with a couple times, and he was sitting there and I was sitting here, and
Shout out to the ticket.
he was reading these scripts, and he was like, "Man, like it's like you guys got like right inside our heads, like to write these." And I said, it's like, we've been traveling with y'all like
So much.
this long, like, I would have never been able to write these,
If I was
like, had we not like been around so much. And they took us in like, I mean, it was crazy. We'd be at like All-Star Weekend, like hanging out, like Common performed, like we're sitting in this little booth, like with LeBron, and like it was crazy.
Yeah.
And then like I remember being like 3 a.m. like,
I got work.
guys, like I'm kicked, like I can't hang anymore. And LeBron would be like, all right, see you later. And then like, God knows when he went to bed, if he went to bed. And then he got MVP at
The next
the
day.
next game, and the next day, and they're like, you guys are just wired a different way. You're superhumans, like,
Yeah,
it's like performance. It's crazy.
So go back to Baron Davis, man. I got a chance, I'll say this when it fits. I got a chance to sit with him in back bars, there was like free. You got the mind of an athlete. And you work like an athlete. And I was like, what? And your role for creativity and marketing. I think it was my favorite compliment of all time. Like, yo, these NBA players are telling me this. I'm like, wow. And I look, that compliment fits you too, from the way I feel you work and your creativity and like coach and player. But being around the NBA that much, for me, basketball is everything to me. I connected to marketing, I connected to building a team and triangle offense and, setting screens and picks for Cleveland music. It's like you literally can take the game of basketball and drop it in the advertising world and win. Being around the NBA for you that close and personal, was it things that you learned from the game and from players that connected to the way you do business?
I think this wasn't all the athletes, but I think the highest performing athletes, they have a level of, I think, professionalism and a level of gratitude is going to sound kind of cheesy, but like I remember so distinctly working with Chris Paul on one of the campaigns, and just the way he'd walk in and thank everybody on the set and introduce himself. That like no one was beneath him. No one was like he was there, and he was going to show up as like the most decent human being first and foremost. And I think that there's so much imposter syndrome. I think in advertising, and you still feel it. Like I think you still feel it. I still feel it. This many years later, and I think trying to sit comfortably with your successes and your failures, and not feeling like you have to like portray any like outward persona of I'm creative or I'm difficult or I'm bossy or I'm whatever you think the vibe of creativity is, like it doesn't exist. And I think that's what I saw like amongst like the Chris Pauls and the Garnetts, and Kobe was like the jewel of all jewels, I think, with that. And yeah, I think that it taught me a lot of like just kind of having that humility and that vulnerability. And I think, it's so much easier as you get into the later years of your career to action it. It's harder to do when you're younger because, it's a competitive field and you feel like you need to have a voice. But I think those elite people, like, they just all have that in common. And I guess, that probably rubbed off a little bit.
Totally. I definitely think that you're probably like a 6'3" guard. With, that can span. You're like a either I'll give you a Luka or a Joker, whatever position.
I wish. I played all the time. I played pickup basketball all the time in San Francisco and New York too, here until my kind of mid-30s, and then things just didn't work quite the same way. And I was never good, to be clear, but I just loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it, and I think there's a lot in teamwork and creativity in hoops. Like, I think it's the most creative sport there is because things happen just so quickly, and the way people understand each other, like on a court, and when the team really vibes, like it's crazy.
Think about the saying they call it basketball IQ.
Yeah.
I never hear that in any other sport. I never heard like hockey IQ and football IQ. So your point, it has a level of thinking and strategy that is.
Yeah, and I was actually at my friend's son's game. They were in the playoffs. And he's 12 or 13 years old. and like they're starting to play like real hoops, but like it was so fun to like just watch and also just like shout like watch the back door and like get like
Watch the
'cause
cut.
they're not like moving like they need
They
to.
don't have it. They don't have it yet.
Yeah, but it's interesting to watch. I think that IQ develop,
Yeah.
and it is it's the puzzle and the creativity part too. I think that I
You took.
really love.
That's what made me bring that up because I don't even know if you ever realized that. But
Not really.
yeah, and I see it like just being in this so much love in basketball and watching how teams play. And now probably you can look back and look at your teams at all your agency that you worked at, and you could probably put each person like, oh, you was the guard,
Yeah.
you was the forward, you was the offensive, but it's just something for me that always been there. Like helps me even in the lane of creativity comes to basketball.
Totally.
So, all right, we're past NBA now. So, I got a chance to meet you when you was at DDB, and you was chief. What officer?
I was the global chief creative officer.
Global chief creative officer. So, let's go to that. How the DDB role came, and then everybody asked you. I forgot we was in a ride from Uber or one place, and I was like just asking you about balance and how do you get to like being that role. But tell me about how that opportunity came, and then now because this is a whole nother level from the roles you had before.
Yeah, so it probably makes sense to just go back a couple jobs first, just because I think
Okay.
like understanding kind of the progression is helpful. So, you go from running like MBA, and then from there, I started running kind of 2 accounts at like a smaller shop, and then I was called back to New York and wanted to come back to New York and went to an agency called BDH, and I started kind of running Axe, and then I ran Axe, and I ran Sprite, and then I ran Axe, and I ran Sprite, and we won PlayStation, and then from there, they made me the CCO of the agency, and so that was my first kind of real, run an agency job, and it was a great sized agency to run. It was around 200 people, which is an awesome size because at 200 people, you have the scale to take on like really big things, but you're also small enough that you know each other.
Yeah.
You all know each other really well, and you're all still working together. It's not like, you don't start creating like little kind of micro groups. So that was an awesome job. And then, I had gotten a call to, I guess, take this DDB North America job. So it wasn't the global job initially, it was the North America job. And, I'd always kind of been in the creative boutiques up until then. So I'd been at, Goodby and Wyden and 180 and then BBH. And so this was actually a pretty radical departure, but the CEO at the time was a woman called Wendy Clark. And she had been my client before at Coke and Sprite. And she was just an incredible human being, an incredible leader. And, I was like, look, if I'm gonna ever like try this out, like you gotta do it with a killer partner who believes in you. And, we went for a lunch that was supposed to last a couple hours, and it literally turned into dinner. And we knew right there and then, like, we'd probably have a decent run together. So I did it. And then, a few years later, she moved up into the global role, and she took me with her into the global role. And so, from BBH to DDB, like, I really kind of had like a soft introduction kind of into the role. So like, I kind of like had the opportunity to succeed first, in an environment that I was more comfortable in, with people who believed in me and I believed in. And then they kind of, in both these situations, groomed me up to be able to, take on this, ginormous role that, you're the creative chief over 10,000 people. It's like,
all over the world.
yeah, it's crazy, you know.
Yeah.
But what you come to learn through all of it is it's really exactly the same job, because you only have so much time in your days, you know, and you only have so much creative energies that you can kind of exude on things. And so, you know, you pick your priorities and you focus on those things. And I think that focus, you know, is what ultimately leads to the people who succeed in those roles or not. You know, is can you focus on the right things? Do you have the right time management? And can you help kind of groom, you know, your style across the network?
So let's talk about now. It's BBD. It's 10,000 how many employees worldwide?
Yeah.
10,000 employees worldwide, different countries. But they're grown up right now.
Yeah.
You're a man now, but through this journey, it's family, it's life, it's money, health, it's all these things. And like being able to have that position, what was the personal life like? It was like, you know, how do you balance? How do you, I mean, some people just can't even work a 9 to 5 and balance. And you know, you're running these big brands. You have to answer brands, you have to answer family, you have to answer friends. What was that? And because I think a lot of people get to see the side of life for you that was like, oh, Ari won another award, Ari another great campaign, he got another client. But what was the journey like trying to run a company and be creative like that? Because, you know, like athletes or entertainers, sometimes a lot of people are like, okay, well, I can't be here for my family now. I have to, I'm not going to do, it's a big sacrifice. But for you, because I think that was probably the biggest stint of your career so far, being at BBD.
Yeah.
What was that other life for you? What was the other world? And how did you balance it?
Well, I think that if you're going to entertain kind of taking on a job like that, you know, it has to fuel you, you know, in a way. And I think, you know, through my many hours of therapy and my, you know, many conversations with my wife, who's also a therapist, like, you know, one of the things that I learned about myself relatively early on was, you know, I love this. Like, this is my fuel. Like, I love solving these problems. I love making things. Like, if I'm not doing, it's my oxygen.
Gotcha.
You know, and so I think, you know, I'm really lucky to be married to somebody who understands that. Who understands that if I don't have that oxygen, like, I go crazy. You know. Now, with that said, like, it's definitely still a balancing act. You know, and I think COVID was another kind of lucky gift in a way. You know, I have 3 young kids. I got
Time with them.
yeah, and I had crazy time with them. You know, and but I loved it. You know, I loved every minute of it. And when we came out of COVID, you know, there were some non-negotiables that, you know, I wasn't going to run around the same way I did before, because like that wasn't working for me, you know. But I didn't realize it at the time, because you get so kind of wrapped up in it, and you get kind of indoctrinated in it, and you're like, oh, well, I have to go to that meeting in Korea for, you know, 3 hours and turn around, and I mean, it doesn't, like, a lot of it didn't make a lot of sense, but you did it, you know, almost on ritual, you know. And what I started to just kind of realize is, like, I wasn't going to do things on ritual. I was going to do things that were going to have great value to me and my clients, you know, and like, some of that other stuff just had to go. Yeah.
So, almost the end. So now, let's come off COVID, still at BBD. We meet.
Yeah.
We meet on a job, which was chill boards, and that's why I dressed the table with our words together. I meet you over a Zoom. I was like, this guy's special. And, you know, we get to Miami. And it was one of the greatest experiences, I got a chance to work on, help directing the spot with you and your team, helping the community. The most real life science project I ever did, in a great way. But, it was a special moment of sitting at the bar on a break with you. And, this was, like I said, you were deep in DVD, and I was, got a chance to say, hey, what do you really want to do in life? And I don't know what made me, I went into like the black male version of like Barbara Walters.
Yeah, we got into it.
We went right deep into it, and I was like, it's more to you. I don't know why. And, it's like you're meant to do great things on your own, and now you are on that journey, and like being at the position you held. When did the switch go off? Like, okay, it's time to get ready to make a change, and do it for myself and do it for my family. Like, because now you're on the journey with the quality experiences. But it's I think everybody has this feeling of like, I want to do this, and we're scared, and it's fear and it's security. But you were on top of the world. Comfortable. Not saying your job was hard, but it was comfortable. All the accolades you could win, some of the best brands. And we kind of even knew the project we were doing was headed for a great success. And that was just one of the clients that you were with that time. But I don't know, I seen it in you then, like, this guy's going to make the jump of life. And what was that turning point for you?
Yeah, it's funny, you've said it, and a couple other people I really kind of love and trust, said actually pretty similar things around the same moment.
Wow.
And it's funny, it's like, it's
I just met you too.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those things that like, sometimes it's just really hard for you to see it yourself because you're in it, And I think all the things you had just set up, like, this was my dream job. Like I was the head of, a giant global network. We were making great work. That year we ended up being the Cannes, Global Network of the Year for the first time in DVD's history. Wow. And so here it was, like I had everything that I thought I, ever wanted, but there was still, a curiosity. And I think the curiosity was just around the kind of work that I see, that I find most interesting in the world right now. And I think a lot of brands are finally catching up to the value that kind of work has in the world. And the work that I'm talking about is, why we name the agency Quality Experiences, is this idea of, any touch point a brand has with a consumer or an audience, I'd rather say audience, is an opportunity to create an experience, And I think that these experiences is, some sort of memorable value exchange, And I think brands for so long have taken for granted that they could just smash their messaging in front of you, And with the way the world works now and all the different platforms and all the different spaces and places to have conversations, like, it's very hard to find your audience. And even when you're finding your audience, what I was hearing from a lot of our largest clients, big Fortune 500 companies, was, sure, we're getting the eyeballs, but the value of the impression is meaningless, And one of the things, we kind of have in our pitch rhetoric at Quality Experiences, people have 10,000 interactions with brands a day. That's like the number. Like, name one you saw from yesterday. Like, it's tricky, And every once in a while you might, maybe once a week I have one, but like once a week, like that's not a good hit ratio at all, And I think that is the future, and I think the problem, the big legacy agencies is they're just not nimble enough to plug into experts like when we did chill boards. Like, we couldn't have done chill boards just with the crew we had at DDB. Like, we needed your expertise, you know, we needed Kilo's expertise, we needed like,
White House.
we needed a lot of, yeah, exactly, we had, and I don't think we plug in, as the legacy agencies, I think every legacy agency does do type work like this,
Totally.
but not the majority of the work like this. You know, this is kind of like the more experimental,
I explain it,
innovative.
it's like a SWAT team. Like if you want to fight a war, it's that. But if you want to really go in and hit the target, you send 7 to 10 people.
But I believe that you can build, and I think that's what my curiosity is, of like, what does an agency in 2024 look like? You know, and how do we build to be nimble enough to find our audience in ways that is so compelling to them that they come to us instead of us, you know, having to go to them.
No, totally.
And I think that's all for the taking, you know, and you know, we have a lot of kind of experimental irons in the fire right now, but it's all looking promising, and I think, you know, hopefully in the next year or two, like, we have a nice little catalog of evidence to suggest
Sure.
this is what an agency in 24, 5, 6 can look like.
And feel it.
Yeah.
So we're almost there. Congratulations on the leap, because I was rooting from the sideline the whole time. I think, you know, I would just randomly call you, check in. Like,
Yeah.
about to do it. I know what you're doing. We're going to do something. So now let's go back to team, go back to the Warriors.
Yeah.
But it's all baked in the quality experience now. You know, you're building the team. You've been good at creative, you've been good at ideas, but it was never in HR. And that's a line for me. I always say I suck at HR.
Yeah.
It's a hard job to find the people to build on your own team. It's different when you're at a company and it's out there that we're hiring and all these, you know, influx of people and you just need to interview, but like to build your own team, to like handpick like the people and the trust, like you have that now. You have a team, you have the logo. What was that process like for you? You know, because a lot of people want to start their own business, they want to do something, but when you do it for yourself, it's a whole different feeling. Like, how was that process, and
Yeah.
what made you know, like, I got it now, and I got the people?
So it was a pretty organic process, and I think, you know, I was actually just talking to a friend of mine this morning who's exploring, you know, doing this too. And, you know, what I said to him was, you know, I just opened a lot of doors, you know, and I just started talking to a lot of people who I really respected. And through those conversations, like, it became just so glaringly obvious, like, as to how this had to go. There were very little choices, I think, that I actually made, to be honest. You know, I think they kind of, you know, presented themselves, and it's funny that way, but I think that is how the best teams form, is like, there's an energy, for whatever reason, that pulls, you know, a group together. And so, you know, early in my days, as I was kind of reaching out to people to kind of get a take on, like, who are the best CEOs and CSOs and CCOs out there. Yeah. All the C's. You know, a lot of the same names kept coming up. And it was funny because I was like, fuck, like, why would they want to come and do this? Like, they've all got great jobs,
Yeah.
you know. But I think, you know, as we started talking about these, you know, thinking about brands and the experiences that they can provide to their audiences in the world, and how we want to make them better than, you know, like anyone else. Like, I think there was something, I guess, kind of in the zeitgeist, I think, right now, of what I think a lot of modern agency leaders think the industry's heading.
Yep.
And so, you know, like, you know, I've known David Droga for a long time. I admire the hell out of him, and what he's built, you know, is nothing short of genius. And I, you know, was introduced, well, I actually knew Colleen from my BBH days, and we went and had lunch, and she was like all about it, you know, and I was like, holy shit, like, I'm gonna get Colleen ready to come join, you know, Quality Experience. And then she was like, we have to do this with Dan. Dan's like the best CEO there is. And I was like, oh my God, like, we're gonna get Colleen and Dan. And then I was like, oh my God, David's gonna like kill me, you know? And we've since gone back and forth, and he's been very, very kind and very supportive. But like, here I have this like dream squad, and then Christina, you know, I'd worked with back at DDB, and she's the most badass designer, you know, I've ever seen. And her conceptual chops are as good as her design chops, and you never find that in advertising. So I was like, that's the CCO, that's easy, you know. So yeah, it all came together, and away we go.
So you would say you're the Golden State Warriors of advertising so far.
Maybe, I hope we're like those like 2009, you know, when they kind of first came out.
There was only 4 of them.
Yeah.
They didn't have a 5th guy. So
Yeah.
you're on track.
Yeah.
So my last one is, it's all said and done. When you think about Ari Weiss, this guy, cool guy, what is the quality experience he wants to bring to the world? Not because you that's the company, so you know what you're doing that for brands.
Yeah.
You know, okay, I understand your brand. This is the quality experience we're going to do for you.
Yeah.
But when it comes to you and quality experience, what do you want to bring to the world?
I think it probably comes back to, you know, entertainment of some sort. You know, I think we live in like an incredibly complicated time, and I think, you know, raising 3 young kids, like, you know, you definitely spend a lot of time thinking about the future and kind of where everything's headed. And I think, I don't know, I think brands can play, you know, a pretty significant role in kind of improving the world. And I think that improvement can be as simple as making you laugh, you know, making you think. I think it can be, you know, making brands show up as more responsible, you know, and you know, I think brands have as much power, if not more, than governments, you know, these days. And so, you know, if we can help guide brands to be more responsible, like that can show up in the world. I think, you know, I think creatives in this industry, you know, are kind of undercover storytellers, and, you know, our responsibility is to, you know, make the day a little bit better, you know, for our audiences in some form or another. And I think that's what I ultimately like doing, is just, you know, getting some sort of positive reinforcement back for something we put out in the world, because it's made some sort of difference. Sometimes it's a joke, and sometimes it can be, you know, a whole, like, you know, purpose-led, you know, initiative. So I guess that's what I hope to do.
No, you're doing it, and this conversation has been an experience of quality.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ari, for coming, man. It's always a pleasure. This felt like one of our phone conversations anyway.
Always.
To be able to do it in the compound and talk about your whole life all the way up until your new journey has been great, man.
And thanks for having me.
Thank you.